Good evening. Tonight we leave the Earth behind for a while, far beyond the noise of cities, far beyond oceans and mountains, beyond the thin blue atmosphere that protects every living thing on our world. Tonight, we travel somewhere very quiet. Somewhere very far away. Tonight's story begins on the surface of the moon. An astronaut stands beneath a sky filled with stars. There is no wind here. No clouds. No sound. Only the endless black of space stretching in every direction. Above the astronaut's helmet visor, the stars appear brighter than they ever do from Earth. Sharp. Steady. Unblinking. And rising above the distant horizon of the moon is something else. A small blue world hanging in darkness. The Earth. From the surface of the moon, Earth looks fragile. A delicate sphere of light. White clouds swirling slowly across deep blue oceans. The entire history of humanity contained within that glowing marble of color. The astronaut pauses for a moment. He has trained for years to stand here. Years of study. Years of preparation. Years of learning how to move, think, and survive in environments that human beings were never meant to inhabit. But nothing in training truly prepares someone for the feeling of standing on another world. Beneath his boots, the lunar soil is soft and powdery. Fine grey dust that has not been disturbed for millions of years. Each step leaves a footprint that may remain long after human history itself has passed. He moves slowly. Every motion careful. Every step measured. The suit he wears protects him from the vacuum of space. Within the life support system attached to his back are the quiet machines that keep him alive. Oxygen circulating. Temperature controlled. A small reserve of water stored in sealed pouches. Emergency nutrients in case something unexpected happens. Engineers on Earth designed the suit to survive almost anything. Almost anything. The astronaut checks the instruments on his wrist. Everything looks normal. Oxygen stable. Power levels steady. Communication channel open. Somewhere far above him, orbiting the moon, the small command spacecraft moves silently across the black sky. His crewmate waits there. Monitoring systems. Preparing for the next phase of the mission. Soon, the astronaut will return. He will launch from the lunar surface in a small ascent module. He will dock with the command craft and begin the long journey back to Earth. But for now, there is still time. Time to walk a little farther across the quiet plains of the moon. He turns slowly. The horizon curves gently around him. In every direction, the landscape is silent and ancient. Small craters. Long shadows. Ridges of grey stone stretching towards darkness. No wind ever moves here. No rain ever falls. This world has remained almost unchanged for billions of years. The astronaut takes another step. Then another. And another. Each step lifting him lightly upward before gravity gently draws him back down again. 1/6 of Earth's gravity. A strange and floating way to move. He glances once more toward Earth. That distant blue light. Every person he has ever known is there. Every city. Every forest. Every ocean. All of human history unfolding on that fragile sphere. The astronaut smiles quietly to himself. Then something small happens. Something so small it would hardly matter on Earth. A slight push. A motion of imbalance. A motion that does not stop when it should. In the low gravity of the moon, the astronaut lifts his foot to take another step. But this time, the motion carries him a little farther than expected. He drifts forward. Then upward. Very slowly. He attempts to correct his movement with a small adjustment of his body. But the adjustment adds another tiny motion. And suddenly, he is no longer touching the ground. At first, it feels almost amusing. Almost amusing. Astronauts train for moments like this. Small jumps. Floating arcs through the lunar gravity. But something is different now. The ground is not returning as quickly as expected. The astronaut rotates slowly in the silence of space. The grey surface of the moon slips beneath him. And the stars begin to surround him in every direction. He activates the small maneuvering thrusters built into the suit. But nothing happens. He tries again. still nothing. The astronaut watches as the lunar surface continues to drift away below him. Very slowly, but unmistakably. The moon is falling away. And he is drifting into space. He does not panic. Not at first. Training moves through him before fear does. His hand goes at once to the controls at his wrist. He checks the maneuvering system again. Then the emergency backup. Then the communication channel. His breathing deepens inside the helmet. Slow. Measured. Disciplined. The moon turns beneath him in silence. A pale surface of dust and stone. A landscape of craters and long black shadows. He can still see the landing site. Small. Distant now. A bright shape against the grey. He opens the channel to the command craft. His voice, when it comes, is calm. Steadier than he feels. There is a malfunction, he says. Suit thrusters are unresponsive. He is off the surface. Drifting. A burst of static answers him. Then the voice of his crewmate. Faint. Farther away than it should be. The astronaut repeats the situation. Again, he checks the controls. Again, he tries the thrusters. Nothing. Only silence. He is rotating now. Slowly enough that it would almost feel peaceful under other circumstances. The moon appears. Then the stars. Then Earth. Then the moon again. A gentle turning in a vast black sea. The voice in his helmet grows sharper. Questions. Procedures. Vectors and calculations. He answers carefully. He gives what data he can. His suit telemetry begins streaming automatically. There is still a chance, he thinks. A small chance. A rescue sequence. A maneuver from orbit. A way to intercept him before he drifts too far. He watches the moon beneath him. It is no longer merely below him now. It is receding. No drama announces this. No sound. No sudden acceleration. Only distance. Distance arriving so quietly that the mind resists it at first. He tells himself that his motion is still small. That small motions can be solved. That systems fail and systems are repaired. That the mission has redundancies. That someone on Earth is already doing the math. Somewhere far away, in rooms lit by screens and quiet urgency, people are likely leaning over consoles now. Calculating fuel. Timing. Trajectory. Possibility. He imagines them very clearly. The white glow of monitors. The low voices. Headsets. Coffee growing cold beside clipped papers and open notebooks. For a few moments, this thought comforts him. Human effort. Human problem solving. The long habit of refusing defeat. It has brought people from Earth to the Moon. Surely it can bring one man back. But time in space has its own strange texture. Seconds feel clear and separate. Longer than they do on Earth. He waits for an instruction that does not come. He waits for a course correction. Waits for some small miracle of engineering. Instead, his crewmate's voice returns with a softness he does not like. The distance is increasing. The available fuel is limited. The margins are narrowing. There are options being discussed. None of them certain. The astronaut closes his eyes for a moment. Then opens them again. The stars remain exactly where they were. Unmoved. Patient. Ancient beyond comprehension. He looks toward Earth. It is still there. Small, blue, and impossibly alive. Cloud bands drift across oceans. Sunlight touches one curved edge with a pale brilliance. From here, no borders can be seen. No nations. No roads. No cities. Only weather. Only light. Only the single bright home of every human being who has ever lived. His communication line remains open for a long time. Voices come and go. Instructions repeat. Telemetry is checked and rechecked. Someone asks him to conserve movement. As if stillness could somehow negotiate with gravity. He understands why they say it. Because saying anything else would mean saying what no one wants to say. Hours begin to pass. The moon grows slowly smaller. At first, the change is difficult to notice. Then, impossible not to notice. The landing site disappears from sight. The curve of the lunar horizon broadens. The world he had stood upon becomes a sphere of stone. He is no longer an astronaut on the moon. He is a solitary human being suspended between worlds. Eventually, the voices from Earth become less frequent. Not absent. Never fully absent. But quieter. More careful. He understands what that means to. Some problems are solved by brilliance. Some are solved by courage. Some by luck. And some problems are simply too large. When they finally tell him that no rescue craft can reach him in time, the words arrive gently. As if gentleness could reduce their weight. He listens without interrupting. His crewmate speaks last. There is a pause in which neither of them says what they are really thinking. Then the astronaut answers. He says he understands. And to his own surprise, he does. Not fully, not emotionally, not yet. But somewhere beneath shock, beneath disbelief, beneath the mind's constant instinct to resist the unacceptable, there is always the beginning of understanding. He checks the readout on his suit again. Oxygen. Water. Power. Emergency nutrient reserves. The suit has been designed for contingencies. It can sustain him for much longer than the public would imagine. Not indefinitely. But long enough. Long enough for him to drift. Long enough to watch the moon become small. Long enough to see Earth from farther away than any unbound human being ever has. Long enough to think. The first sip of water he takes feels almost ordinary. A small tube extends inside the helmet. He draws a little of the stored water into his mouth and swallows. Cool. Carefully rationed. A simple human act performed in impossible surroundings. He wonders briefly how many people on Earth are drinking water at that exact moment. At kitchen sinks. On trains. In offices. By hospital beds. By open windows. By lamps late at night. Billions of unnoticed acts of living. All continuing while he drifts farther into silence. The communication schedule changes after that. Mission Control asks him to preserve energy. There is no need for constant transmission now. They will check in at intervals. He agrees. There is almost a tenderness in the arrangement. An understanding that constant voices would only make the emptiness between them more painful. So, for the first time since the drift began, he is left mostly alone. Alone with the hum of the suit. alone with his breathing. Alone with the stars. He has spent years preparing for space. For vacuum. For isolation. For systems failure. For the discipline required to survive where survival is unnatural. But no one can really prepare for the moment when the Earth becomes an object rather than a world. He watches it for a long time. That blue sphere. Suspended in blackness. As the hours continue, a strange reversal begins to take place in his mind. At first, he had thought of himself as the one who has lost. The one cut loose from safety. The one moving away from what mattered. But now, seeing Earth from this distance, he begins to feel something else. The Earth itself is the fragile thing. A small garden of air and water and warmth, turning silently through a darkness wide enough to swallow all imagination. A brief island of life. Not central. Not protected. Not guaranteed. Just astonishing. Night comes to one side of it while daylight holds the other. Cloud systems move. The oceans hold their color. The continents drift under weather no eye from this distance can fully read. He thinks of cities beginning to glow in the dark half of the world. Millions of lights blooming across coastlines and valleys. Each one a marker of human lives in motion. Someone eating dinner. Someone washing dishes. Someone sitting awake with grief. Someone laughing. Someone making tea. Someone staring up at the moon without knowing that a man is drifting beyond it. This does not make him feel angry or abandoned. It makes him feel connected in a way he had never expected. Because life on Earth is continuing exactly as it always does. Messy, ordinary, beautiful, unaware, and perhaps that is what gives it dignity. He drifts into the first long sleep, not because he wants to, but because the body insists. The suit supports him. Temperature regulated. Pressure maintained. Its systems murmuring around him like a mechanical heartbeat. When he wakes, he has no true sense of time. There is no sunrise here for him. No room changing color. No familiar sound from outside a window. Only Earth, moon, stars, and the slow certainty that he is farther away than before. He checks the suit again. The numbers have changed. Not catastrophically, but undeniably. His supplies are finite. His time is measurable. The human mind dislikes measurable endings. As long as uncertainty exists, hope can disguise itself as probability. But once the numbers become clear, hope changes shape. It becomes quieter. Less about rescue. More about how one meets what is coming. He drinks another small ration of water. Then, almost without thinking, he releases the slightest droplet from the tip of the tube before drawing it in. The droplet floats in front of his visor. A perfect sphere. Small as a bead of glass. Shining softly in reflected light. Inside it, for a brief moment, he sees a tiny inverted Earth. Blue. White. Curved. Held inside a drop of water in the middle of space. He watches it with such stillness that it feels almost ceremonial. An ocean reduced to a pearl. A world reflected in the substance from which life began. Then he draws the droplet back and swallows it. And for some reason, that simple act nearly breaks his heart. Not because it is tragic, because it is beautiful. And because beauty, in moments like these, seems almost unbearable. He begins, then, to think of his life in long, quiet stretches. Not his career first. Not the mission. Not the achievements that had once seemed important. Instead, he thinks of childhood. A summer evening. Warm air through an open screen door. A garden hose left shining on the grass. The smell of pavement after rain. He sees himself small again, lying on his back in a yard at dusk. Looking up at the first stars. He had felt then what children sometimes feel before language grows too crowded around them. That the sky was not only beautiful, it was mysterious in a way that made the heart ache a little. That same feeling returns to him now. Only larger. Much larger. He remembers asking once whether the stars went on forever. No one had answered him in a way that satisfied him. Perhaps because there is no satisfying answer. Perhaps because forever is not something the human mind can hold. Now he floats among the unanswered question. And strangely, it no longer disturbs him in quite the same way. The terror of it has softened into wonder. He checks in again with Earth. The voice that answers is warm. professional. Careful not to sound too emotional. They ask about his condition, his oxygen, his water, his clarity of mind. He answers honestly. He is stable. For now. There is a pause in which no one says anything. Then someone on Earth begins speaking to him, not about systems, but about the planet below. Weather over the Pacific. Dawn crossing Europe. Storms moving over South America. The familiar geography of a living world. He listens with closed eyes, as if the names themselves are a kind of home. When the transmission ends, the silence that follows is not empty. It is filled with memory, and with something else beginning to form. Not peace yet, but the distant outline of it. The second long stretch of drifting begins quietly. Space does not mark the passage of time in ways the body easily understands. There is no sunrise to greet the morning, no evening light to soften the end of the day. Only the steady turning of Earth far away. Only the pale shape of the moon growing smaller behind him. And the stars. Always the stars. He checks the small panel on his suit again. Oxygen reserves are stable. Water supplies remain carefully measured. The suit continues to function exactly as it was designed to do. Machines are sometimes more reliable than circumstances. He drinks another small ration of water. Only enough to keep his body steady. He has begun to ration it carefully now. Not because he hopes to survive indefinitely, but because human beings instinctively care for the life they still possess. Even when they know its length. The Earth rotates slowly in the distance. The blue and white sphere now looks smaller than it did before. but it is still unmistakable. Still beautiful in a way that is difficult to describe. He remembers the first time he saw Earth from orbit. The training simulations had shown images. Thousands of them. But none of them truly prepared him for the real thing. The way the oceans seemed alive with motion. The way the atmosphere formed a thin, glowing line along the edge of the planet. So fragile. So impossibly thin. A delicate veil protecting everything that breathes. From space, the astronaut had once thought, Earth does not look powerful. It looks vulnerable. And precious. He remembers something an instructor once said during training. That astronauts who see Earth from space rarely return unchanged. Because distance reveals something that everyday life hides. That every forest, every city, every desert, every ocean, and every human life exists on the same small island of air. Turning slowly through a silent universe. He wonders now how many people are looking at the moon tonight. Children lying in backyards. Couples walking through quiet streets. Someone pausing beside a window before sleep. They would see the moon as it has always appeared. Bright. Mysterious. A calm companion in the night sky. None of them would know that a human being is drifting just beyond it. This thought no longer frightens him. Instead, it feels strangely peaceful. The world continues. The rivers flow. The oceans move with the tides. People laugh. People argue. People fall asleep beside people they love. Life goes on. And perhaps that is exactly how it should be. He closes his eyes again for a while. The suit hums softly around him. A quiet mechanical companion in the endless dark. When he opens his eyes again, the stars seem brighter. Or perhaps he is simply noticing them more carefully now. In space, stars do not twinkle the way they do from Earth. There is no atmosphere to scatter their light. Each star shines with a steady clarity, sharp, silent, unmoving. Some of those lights began their journey toward him long before human civilization existed. Some before the first mammals walked the earth. Some before the moon itself had settled into its orbit. The astronaut finds this strangely comforting. Because it reminds him that the universe has always been larger than human life. And yet, human life still appeared. Somehow. Somewhere in that enormous history of stars and dust and gravity, a planet formed oceans. Those oceans formed life. And eventually, that life learned how to look back at the stars that created it. He smiles faintly inside the helmet. It is a strange thing, he thinks. That the universe can produce creatures capable of wondering about the universe. Creatures capable of asking questions that may never be answered. Creatures capable of drifting through space and still feeling curiosity. He watches the moon again. Now it looks almost like another planet. A quiet grey sphere floating in blackness. Its craters and ridges softened by distance. Once, long ago, early humans looked up at the same moon and wondered what it might be. A god? A lantern? A gateway? Now a human being has walked upon it and drifted away from it. The astronaut begins to notice something subtle then. Not a sound. Not a movement. Something more delicate than either of those. A feeling. A faint impression that the emptiness around him is not quite as empty as it once seemed. He cannot explain why. There is nothing visible yet. No shape, no light, no change in the instruments on his suit. And yet the sensation remains, as though the vastness of space contains more presence than he had imagined. He turned slowly, letting the stars drift across his visor. For a moment he wonders if loneliness has begun to change the way his mind works. Isolation can do that to people. The brain searches for patterns, for signs of life, for evidence that one is not alone. But the feeling does not seem frightening. If anything, it feels calm. Like the quiet awareness that comes when someone enters a room without speaking. He waits. And the stars continue their silent watch. Far away, the earth turns. The moon drifts farther behind him. And somewhere in the enormous dark between the stars, something has begun to notice him. By the third long stretch of drifting, something inside him has changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but steadily. The sharp edge of fear has worn down. The constant need to calculate, to solve, to resist what is happening has grown quiet. He still checks his instruments, still measures oxygen, still drinks small, careful amounts of water. But these actions no longer feel like a struggle against time. They feel more like a way of accompanying it. The earth is smaller now. Not gone, never gone, but distant enough that its details have softened. It is no longer a world of places. It is a single presence. A quiet light suspended in darkness. He watches it with something close to gratitude. Not for what he is losing, but for what he was once part of. The oceans, the air, The simple act of standing on the ground without thinking about it. All the unnoticed gifts of being alive on Earth. He drinks another small measure of water. This time he does not rush it. He lets the coolness settle slowly. He notices the sensation fully. As if it might be one of the last times he experiences it. There is no sadness in that thought now. Only attention. He releases another tiny droplet. It floats before him again. A perfect sphere. But this time he does not immediately draw it back. He simply watches it. And for a moment, something unusual happens. The light around the droplet seems to change. Not brighter, not dimmer, just different. As though the space surrounding it has become aware of its presence. He lowers the droplet slowly. And looks outward into the darkness beyond it. At first, he sees nothing. Only stars. Only the vast, familiar silence. But then, something shifts. It is not a shape in the way human eyes expect shape. Not an object. Not a vessel. Not anything built or constructed. It is more like a presence in the darkness. A subtle distortion. A region of space that seems to move without moving. The astronaut does not feel fear. If anything, he feels a deep and unexpected calm. As though something ancient has arrived. Not to take, but simply to be. The presence does not approach quickly. There is no sudden motion. No urgency. It unfolds gradually. Like a thought forming. like a horizon becoming visible through fog. Light begins to gather within it. Soft. Almost like the glow of distant clouds at sunrise. But there is no sun here. No atmosphere. No reason for such light to exist. And yet it does. The astronaut watches without speaking. Without reaching for controls. Without attempting to understand in any analytical way. Because something deeper than thought tells him that this is not a problem to solve. It is something to witness. The light expands slowly. Not blinding. Not overwhelming. Just present. Within it, patterns seem to move. Not mechanical patterns. Not geometric in any strict sense. More like currents or memories. Or the quiet flow of something alive beyond the limits of human form. He has the sudden, clear impression that this presence has always been here. Not waiting. Not watching in the way humans watch. But existing. Moving through the vast spaces between stars in its own way. Unconcerned with time as humans understand it. The astronaut feels something then that is difficult to name. Not fear. Not excitement. Not even surprise. Something closer to recognition. As though a question he has carried his entire life. Has finally found its answer. Without words. Without explanation. Simply by being present. The light surrounds him now. Gently. Without force. Without resistance. His suit continues to function. His breathing remains steady. His body is unchanged. And yet something within his awareness begins to shift. The vastness of space no longer feels empty. It feels inhabited in a way that does not require form or structure. The stars are no longer distant objects. They feel like part of a larger continuity. And he, drifting between them, does not feel separate from it anymore. He understands something then. Not as a sentence, not as a conclusion, but as a quiet certainty. That consciousness does not belong only to human minds. That awareness may be woven into the fabric of the universe itself. That what he is experiencing now is not an ending, but a continuation in a form he had never imagined. The earth glows faintly in the distance. The moon, now far behind him, is almost lost among the stars. The life he knew is still there, still unfolding, still filled with ordinary moments that he now understands are anything but ordinary. He feels no desire to return. Not because Earth has lost its meaning, but because its meaning is now part of something larger. The light around him softens further. As though inviting him to rest. His body relaxes. His breathing slows. And for the first time since the drift began, he feels completely at peace. Not because the situation has changed, but because his understanding of it has. The presence does not speak. It does not need to. There is nothing to explain. Nothing to justify. Only the quiet reality of being. Shared across distances far greater than human thought can measure. The astronaut closes his eyes. And as he drifts, held gently within that soft, luminous vastness, he lets go of the last small tension within him. not of life, but of the need to hold onto it. The stars remain. The universe continues. And somewhere within it, awareness endures. Good night.